Welcome to the Ontario Mortgage and Real Estate Insights podcast, your go-to source for the latest developments, trends, and regulatory changes in the industry. I'm your host, Steve Hamoan, here to provide you with insights sourced from reputable news outlets to help you stay informed and make well-informed decisions. This podcast is brought to you by Real Approved Inc., a trusted mortgage brokerage dedicated to helping Canadians achieve their homeownership dreams. Visit realapproved.ca to learn more about how their experienced team can assist you with your mortgage needs. Let's dive into today's episode. Our first story today focuses on Chrystia Freeland's housing plan, which intriguingly ties immigration to housing supply. Freeland, a Liberal leadership candidate, has proposed a strategy where the number of newcomers admitted to Canada would be linked to the availability of housing. This plan aims to slow down population growth until housing affordability stabilizes. It's worth noting that Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has been advocating a similar approach, emphasizing the need to align immigration numbers with housing starts. Under the federal government's current immigration plan, there is an expectation for the number of permanent residents to decrease annually, reaching 365,000 by 2027. This is a shift from the previous goal, which aimed to admit over 500,000 permanent residents annually from 2024 to 2026. Both Freeland and Poilievre seem to be on a parallel track with their proposals, although they differ in some specifics. Freeland is also advocating for cities to cut down on development charges to reduce home building costs, with a warning that federal infrastructure funding could be withheld if these cuts are not made. This mirrors Poilievre's proposal to tie federal transfers to municipalities based on the housing starts they report. Furthermore, both leaders are committed to removing the goods and services tax from new homes for first-time buyers. Freeland proposes this tax exemption for homes up to $1.5 million, while Poilievre limits it to homes under $1 million. Additionally, Freeland has expressed her intention to ban the use of artificial intelligence by landlords to analyze renters' personal information for setting rents. This issue has been a topic of concern, with New Democratic Party MP Bonita Zerillo calling for a Competition Bureau investigation into algorithmic pricing in the rental market. The Bureau has confirmed that such an investigation is underway. Freeland's housing plan also suggests increasing the annual contribution cap for the tax-free first home savings account to $10,000 from $8,000 and providing financial support for factories to build more modular homes. These proposals are part of her broader strategy to address the housing crisis as she competes for the Liberal leadership. As the leadership race unfolds, other Liberal candidates have also put forward their housing strategies. Ruby Dalla, for example, has proposed appointing a housing czar to tackle the housing crisis and suggested a moratorium on capital gains tax for investors selling properties during a specific period. Meanwhile, Mark Carney has talked about incentives for prefabricated homes, and Karina Gould has promised to expand cooperative housing and offer tax credits to first-time home buyers. With these housing proposals in the spotlight, the upcoming Liberal Leadership Convention in March will be pivotal in determining Canada's next Prime Minister and the direction of housing policy in the country. As always, we'll keep you updated on these developments and how they might affect the real estate landscape in Ontario. The Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, or CMHC, has reported a 3% increase in the annual pace of housing starts for January compared to December. This rise is largely attributed to the strength in multi-unit starts in Quebec and British Columbia. The seasonally adjusted annual rate of housing starts reached 239,739 units in January, an increase from 232,492 in December. In urban areas, the annual pace of starts also rose 3% to 220,643 units in January, up from 215,052 in December. The growth was especially pronounced in multi-unit urban starts, which include apartments, condominiums, and townhouses. These saw an 8% rise, primarily driven by an increase in purpose-built rentals in Quebec and British Columbia. Year over year, actual housing starts in cities with populations of at least 10,000 rose 7%, with 15,930 units initiated in January 2025, compared to 14,883 in January 2024. Notably, Montreal experienced a staggering 112% increase in actual housing starts year over year, while Vancouver saw a 37% rise, both fueled by higher multi-unit starts. However, Toronto's starts declined by 41% from January 2024, mainly due to a decrease in multi-unit starts. The annual pace of rural starts was estimated at 19,096 units. However, the overall 6-month moving average of the seasonally adjusted annual rate of housing starts saw a slight decline of 2.5% to 236,892 units in January. Tanya Barraza Ochoa, CMHC's deputy chief economist, noted that while these increases indicate early signs of progress, foreign trade risks pose significant uncertainty for future housing construction. The CMHC's recent Housing Market Outlook report anticipates a rebound in home sales and prices this year, as buyers benefit from improved borrowing conditions. However, the report also forecasts a slowdown in starts from 2025 to 2027, driven by a decline in condominium construction as investor interest fades and demand from young families decreases. The outlook is further complicated by potential widespread tariffs from the United States. A trade conflict between Canada and the United States, alongside factors like reduced immigration targets, could slow the economy and curb housing activity, despite some households experiencing short-term improved purchasing power. In a scenario where high tariffs are introduced, the CMHC predicts that inflation would temporarily rise, prompting the Bank of Canada to lower its key policy rate to support the economy. This could lead to a recession that prolongs Canada's housing recovery, causing more homebuyers to delay purchases and resulting in fewer homes being built. In Northern Ontario, a newly built 3-bedroom home in Sudbury is listed at $600,000, and Sam Biasucci, the owner of Saldan Developments, takes us through the factors contributing to this price. Biasucci owns the Sault Ste. Marie-based company responsible for constructing this home in the Hanmer area of Greater Sudbury. Biasucci acknowledges that $600,000 is a significant amount, and many dual-income families will find it challenging to afford. He emphasizes that this price is as competitive as possible given current market conditions. Despite common perceptions that builders reap substantial profits, Biasucci clarifies that his company makes around $30,000 in profit from such a sale. Breaking down the costs, Biasucci points out that approximately $70,000 of the sale price is allocated to taxes and other government fees. He suggests that reducing these costs could make homes more accessible to first-time buyers. However, he refrains from heavily criticizing government policies, acknowledging the complexity of political roles and the housing crisis. Biasucci, who has been in the home-building business for 45 years, describes the housing crisis as unpredictable and challenging. He notes the increasing demand for housing units, which is not being met, and highlights how costs have risen, particularly during the pandemic, which he describes as an unprecedented opportunity for price hikes. Unfortunately, he points out, incomes have not kept pace with these rising costs. Despite these challenges, Biasucci underscores the importance of fair wages for construction workers, ensuring that they earn enough to afford the homes they build. This commitment to fair compensation extends to suppliers as well, as Biasucci emphasizes the responsibility of all parties involved in maintaining affordability. Biasucci expresses optimism about recent political efforts to address housing costs, suggesting there might be a light at the end of the tunnel as politicians focus on tackling these issues. This sentiment reflects a cautious hope that collaborative efforts could lead to meaningful solutions in the housing market. Let's turn our attention to what's on the horizon in the Canadian business world this coming week. There are several key events and data releases that could have significant implications for the real estate and mortgage industries, as well as the broader economy. First up, the ongoing trade dispute between Canada and the United States remains a focal point. Businesses and investors are closely monitoring any developments, particularly the potential imposition of tariffs next month. Canadian politicians are continuing their efforts to persuade U.S. President Donald Trump to retract these tariff threats, which could drive up prices and negatively impact both nations' economies. Next, we're expecting two critical pieces of data for the Canadian housing market. The Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation is set to release the January housing starts figures today, while the Canadian Real Estate Association will publish the home sales data for January tomorrow. In December, home sales saw a notable increase of 19.2% compared to December 2023, so it'll be interesting to see if this trend continues. On the inflation front, Statistics Canada is scheduled to release its latest consumer price index for January tomorrow. After December's annual inflation rate stood at 1.8%, slightly lower than November's 1.9%, market watchers will be keen to see if inflationary pressures have shifted. In the world of corporate earnings, several major Canadian companies are set to report their financial results this week. RioCan Real Estate Investment Trust will kick things off on Tuesday, followed by Gildan Activewear Incorporated and Manulife Financial Corporation on Wednesday. Thursday will see results from Cameco Corporation, Cascades Incorporated, Cenovus Energy Incorporated, and Tech Resources Limited, with Onex Corporation wrapping up the week on Friday. Finally, Bank of Canada Governor Tiff Macklem is scheduled to deliver a speech on Friday to the Mississauga Board of Trade and Oakville Chamber of Commerce. With the central bank recently cutting its key policy interest rate by 0.25 percentage point to 3%, Macklem's remarks will be closely watched for any hints on future monetary policy directions. These events and data releases could shape the economic landscape in the coming days, influencing everything from mortgage rates to housing market activity. As always, we'll keep a close eye on these developments and provide you with the insights you need to navigate the real estate and mortgage sectors effectively.